Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Sunday. Um, Before we start, there's a couple of things that I've been meaning to just mention in the past and keep forgetting. Um, Somebody asked a number of times in chat in the past if I would cover what the gray zone means in the heart rate variability display that we use in biotuning. So um, the gray zone, I have a whole explanation about that on a previous live stream that I did a couple of years ago. So if you go back to the original live streams on YouTube, which is https://bit.ly/Dr. Thompson live. And the D and the T and the L are capitalized, Dr. Thompson live. And then that will bring you to the whole list of all the live streams I did, all 101 of them from 2 years ago. And you're looking for, scroll down, you're looking for the civilization neuron, which was a whole episode based on the HRV and the gray zone and the civilization neuron and what I think that means. So that's that. Let's see here. I think that's the most important thing I wanted to get off because I keep forgetting to do it. So, and just as a reminder, many of you have been with me here way back from the beginning. Where the very first broadcast I did was on my laptop, sitting behind me over here, and the picture was a little glitchy because the bandwidth wasn't all that great on the laptop, and there was some kind of reverberating flapback of every time I said something, it would repeat it like a half second. That was my first broadcast before I really started to know what I was up to. Then Shay came to the rescue. And that was 101 broadcasts. But in the beginning, I laid out the whole concept and idea of these mind links and why these mind links were important and the history of how I had tried to put this together with other groups and sort of was brushed off and not listened to. But once I was in charge of my own broadcast, then I could do whatever I pleased. So that was a great sort of liberating experience. So today we're talking about a definition of, what's real. Now, you have to understand, as a child of the 60s, that was one of the primary mind-blowing experiences for a whole generation of people, us, baby boomers who are from the consciousness revolution that happened in the 60s, where we all spontaneously resurrected the sacred sort of psychedelic plants that had been used for millennia, but usually controlled through the shaman or the holy person as a sacrament. And for those in the lead core people who were part of the real movement, the real awakening of consciousness and questioning everything that arose from that in the 60s. Those sacraments were used exactly that way. If you were going to take some mushroom trip, you scouted out a location in nature that was beatific and safe and you wouldn't be bothered, and you prepared for that for a week. It wasn't the kind of thing where you were drunk and stoned at some party and somebody handed you some mushrooms and you decided to trip as well. So those kind of people, the party animal people, were the hangers on, the ones who like showed up because the real thing looked cool. So a bunch of hoopla shows up and turns it into a party. Then the media shows up with cameras and takes pictures of those people and calls that the movement and calls them hippies. And the real people were long gone by that point. I mean, once the weirdo partiers show up, then the real people kind of moved on because this got poisoned. So, and at the time was the time of some great figures that showed up. I talked about the Lindisfarne concept with William Irwin Thompson in the 60s, who is an MIT professor of philosophy and hung out with Timothy Leary and Richard Alpert, who became Baba Ramdas, and Gunther Weil, all psychiatrists working using psychedelics in their professional practice with astounding results. And then that broke out into the spiritual revelations that happened during those periods of time, went far beyond not just healing people of their psychiatric disorders, but opening people to the reality of the cosmos. And in those kind of experiences that we all had together, having those kind of experiences where you were sort of unprepared for the complete dismantling and the dismantling of what you considered to be real and reality itself became fractionalized and evaporated in a puff of smoke. And what you experienced was the energetic, vibrational nature of everything. And all of everything is a giant sort of musical event where nested standing waves of vibrational frequencies summated and phase canceled and did all kinds of things in multiple layers all around you, and they generated colors and smells and emotional sensations all mixed together, and where they coalesced appeared to be a thing, a something, and where they phase canceled appeared to be a space around them. That kind of experience. And then in the midst of all of that, you came to realization that all of this was deeply connected to you yourself experiencing it, and that there was a feedback loop there, that you weren't just a passive observer observing all this psychedelic mind-blowing phenomenon around you. Deep in the middle of it, you realized that what the media was calling hallucinations was in reality a stripping away of the illusions of my small mind trying to make sense of it all and putting labels on things, and all those labels disappear, and all of your senses have the volume knobs have been turned up to 10, so they all start blending with each other. And you realize very distinctly that what you were seeing was not hallucinations, but the deeper reality behind everything that you normally don't get to see. So that never leaves you, by the way. You're forever changed when you've had that kind of experience. You can never look upon a tree or a leaf or a blade of grass the same after that. Your relationship to the world has now undergone a radical shift. part of that experience is realizing that you are an active participant in the creation of reality moment by moment. And in the center of that, you get a taste of the patriarchs and the ancestors and what they had said in the most ancient texts that you are familiar with, realizing that, texts that are now 4,000-year-old texts, discussing what I'm talking about now as a possibility of waking up either in the Tao or through meditation or through every minute Zen or whatever it is, technique, that you come to have this kind of realization that even though it seems old 4,000 years ago, humanity is millions of years old, and the passing down of information that was experienced out of all that time is only 4,000 years ago that people discovered something that they could write something down and communicate it. That's just 4,000 years ago. Our whole unwritten history of humanity goes back hundreds of thousands of years, where it was oral traditions, song and dance, that the great story of humanity is before the written texts. The grand stories, for the most part, got lost. A small, little, tiny percentage bled through and ended up in the written word at one point. But for the majority of all of the secrets, the great sort of cosmic library of Alexandria, before the printed word, before things were handed down that way, they were handed down by memory. So people exercised their memory and carried the great stories. And the great stories of your personal genealogy were recited and passed down from grandfather to grandson in an unbroken line that went for millions of years of humanity. We've sort of lost that. The family unit and the tribal unit has been dispersed. That our connection with our indigenous roots, our indigenous connection, our primal, before civilization, living being in a universe of living beings on a world of living beings that all share space together, and recognize under the hood that we are brothers and sisters of life, to be greatly honored and given space for, that has been lost. And the result of losing that is the world we currently have, which is a world that strayed away from the laws of the universe that all other creatures obey. And we decided to make our own rules where everything belongs to us to do as we will, with no thought or empathy towards anything else that's alive. And we have to recognize that comes from us. That, as Carl Jung said, what you don't handle on the inside, you project into the outer world and work it out there. So from one standpoint, and from a quantum standpoint, the external projected reality in this world that we experience is an external projection of our collective unconscious soul, projected into something that we experience out here. And so the deep part of these mind links is to use science to align our brainwaves together with brain entrainment. And with headphones, synchronizing of the hemispheres opens us up to higher information pathways, both of information and of influence. And to use that influence to shift the quantum field and change the reality that we're a part of with a new idea. A new idea that is emerging right now out of the grassroots of the population of Earth in a new format that's more mature of what began in the 60s when I was there. I was an artist in the 60s, an artist and a musician and a filmmaker. I was going to art school. I graduated from high school in 1966. I was smack dab in the middle of it. So I experienced it firsthand, and I've watched the evolution of it for all these years, and I'm seeing its return now. It's like an old fashion always returns, right? So, but now we have psychedelics are now legal again in psychotherapy. I've been approached by psychiatrists who use my soundtracks exclusively for their psychedelic therapy. I've had them fly here and meet with me, find out that I have a fan base of psychiatrists across the country. How crazy is that? If you ever told me that when I was back in the 60s, I would have laughed you out of the room. But just the profound nature of how there's something very powerful and strong that is arising, that is positive, that is awakening, that is reconnecting with the good side of humanity out loud in your face. I think it's not too soon to begin to call it the newest bud of that is the Taylor Swift syndrome, where, somebody who's unimaginably popular, but why? Because she's treating people well and she's giving huge amounts of money away for good causes, that she's doing good things, she's putting a positive feeling and speaking to people's hearts, so she wouldn't have 100,000 people show up in Melbourne, so it's not surprising to see that. It's like when the Beatles came out in the 60s, it was the same thing. All of a sudden, the windows had opened up, the curtains had been pulled back, and sunshine was shining through the window again. Something joyous and mind-blowing had just awakened. That's the crest of the wave that we are riding on, that the impetus to be involved in this is that same thing. It's something is rising up in us that's hungry for reconnecting to each other, to life at large, and to question all the things that we have been taught, or the things that have been shoved down our throats and told is the way it is. Whenever you wake up, that's the first thing to dissolve. All bets are off at that point, But basically, for all of us, for every person, and for society as a whole, is the draw to define what is reality and why are we here. So when we, what's real? Society has its stamp of approval. It stamps this is real and stamps that's real and this is real and that's real. And trust us because we're the elite scientists who've got the $1 billion of equipment that do scientific experiments, and they're double-blind studies, so you can trust it. And it's published and peer-reviewed. Excuse me, who are the peers? What's their qualifications? Have they ever had a psychedelic experience? Have they ever broken through the rules? Or are they the product of a society where it was shoved down their throats and now they're towing the line? So the definition of what is real is, don't just teach your children. Teach them to be skeptically spiritual about all things that come at them. Because there's the spiritual materialism part of this too. There's always some huckster with a white robe with beads that wants to sell you some book or sell you some course in enlightenment for the wrong reasons. So always question wherever it's coming from, including me. I mean, that's the real way that you use the rational part of your mind to be discriminative. Well, so here's the official version of what's real. A, having objective independent existence, not artificial, fraudulent, or illusory, genuine. Also being precisely what the name implies. Occurring or existing in actuality. That's sort of it. Like the things that you experience, that you are in the world. You hear things and feel things. It rains on your face. The rain is real. Your skin is real. The sensations are real. There's clouds in the sky, and there is a sky. There's an atmosphere. There's a planet. There's other planets, there's other stars, there's nebula, there's the whole universe out there. That's real. Oceans and creatures and the Earth's biome that you're part of, plants and creatures and bugs and birds, and all these things are the real things that I can touch and see and hear in my world. That convinced me that this is what real is, what real looks like. Of course, my imagination is real and my dreams are real, but it's a different kind of real. But from the standpoint of my deep part, there is no distinction between what's happening in my dreams and my imagination and what's happening in the, quote, real world. But from the moment I was conceived and born out into the earth and had all the experiences that I've, had in my life that have equaled a bunch of stuff on shelves and things around me that I've collected over the decades, photo albums that prove that I'm real and that I'm this old and on and on. Those things have an objective reality. If I have kept diaries or memoirs, those things, sort of the written word can form memories in my mind and replay those movies from the past. However, we know that memories are colored by 1,000 things. That there was a famous Japanese movie called Rashomon, where a murder takes place in the rain in the middle of a forest on a roadway with a dozen people that witnessed it. And when the magistrate shows up and interviews each of these people, everybody's got a different story because everybody has a different reality from a dozen different standpoints. No two people experience the same thing because reality is filtered through the things that have happened to me in the past. I add something to it. So for all of us that are here today, no one of us has the same experience. And in what real is for you is a unique universe from your standpoint. And if ever comes a time where we can connect each other's brains together and experience each other's thoughts, it might make you crazy to see what another person's standpoint and feelings about things is that are completely surprising and unfamiliar to you. How another person views reality and experiences it. So, and more as scientists have cracked open the nature of reality in the quantum universe and seeing what rules are applying in that part of our world, the real core foundation, scaffolding that eventually forms atoms in the periodic table, which combine together into compounds which make cells and creatures and things around us. The rules out here in this world and the rules under the hood in the quantum world are very, very different from each other. And the experiences of reality in the quantum world are very much closer to the kind of experiences that you have with psychedelic substances. You experience a quantum world. And when you land back in your body afterwards in the material Newtonian world, you now have pulled the curtain back and you've seen something deep about what this all is, and that it's sort of what I call a dream with teeth. You cut yourself, you bleed, and it hurts. But you could dream that you cut yourself and you bleed and it hurts. And how are you supposed to know the difference? And perhaps there's no difference at all. But here we go. Nobel Prize-winning physicists prove that the universe is actually not real. And this is like a theme of Nobel Prize-winning physicists who have pretty much come up with the same thing. The fact that the universe is not locally real is one of the more disquieting discoveries of the last half century. Real, which indicates that objects have defined attributes, independent of observation. For example, an apple can be read even when no one is looking. That's local, which means that objects can only be impacted by their surroundings so that any effect cannot travel faster than light. Quantum physics researchers have discovered that these concepts cannot both be true. Instead, the evidence suggests that objects are not only influenced by their surroundings, and that they may lack distinct properties prior to measurement. Do you honestly believe the moon isn't there when you're not gazing at it? Albert Einstein famously asked a friend. And as I've shown before in other broadcasts, with PubMed articles from Nobel Prize-winning physicists over and over and over again, it now appears that that's exactly the way things are, that the universe is an ecological system, that all the rules that we see that apply to universal processes, all the way down into the atom and the quantum field, and in how my body functions. My body is an ecological system, always trying to get the most work with the least amount of energy expended because it's part of the universal process. Everything tries to do that. So that means that in the course of conservation of energy, it would be ridiculous to have if I'm looking this way and I can't see the piano and stuff behind me and the bookcase with the books and all the other stuff back there, there's no reason for the universe to spend the extra energy to have that back there as a manifested thing if I'm not witnessing it. That as soon as I look behind me and I look at it, the potentiality for it to be there now pops into existence. But when I look away, it's not necessary for it to actually be there, and it pops back into a probability cloud of a probability or possibility for a piano to sit back there. But it's only necessary to actually actualize it when I'm involved. It's very similar to online gaming. Like you create an avatar character in an online game, and you design your body, and then you land in some spaceport, And you can look around and you can see things. You can interact with objects. You can pull your sword out. You see other people, other creatures and people and men and women and creatures all dressed up, and they're walking around, and you can interact with them, and you know that each and every one of those is some actual human being on the planet someplace, maybe in Europe, maybe in Canada, maybe in Asia, maybe in Oklahoma, who designed their avatars, and now they're all interacting together, and you can see them walk past you. And however, you know that the computer is not using resources to keep the piano a real piano if you're not looking. If you're not looking, that disseminates and goes into computer code. When you turn around and look, it assembles itself and becomes something you can see. When you look away from it, it's disappearing as you're moving. That's very similar to what quantum physicists are trying to describe about the subjective nature of the creation of reality, moment by moment by moment, and why they say that consciousness is a requirement for reality to exist. It's all based on the Schrödinger cat paradox equations that, you have a box with a cat in it, with a bottle of cyanide, with a hammer suspended above it. You put the lid on, and you give it a shake. You don't know whether the hammer dropped or not, and the cat's alive or dead. And in reality, it's not yet. The cat just went into a twilight zone state of living/dead cat. It hasn't been decided yet until at some future time, like a minute or 2 minutes or 5 minutes or a day or a week or a year, you open up the box and you take a look to see what happened. And let's say you see a dead cat, and you go, oh, okay, so when I shook the box, the hammer dropped and the cat died. And no, that's not true. 5 minutes ago, when you shook the box, the cat went into a twilight zone state of living dead cat. The coin got flipped, and it's in this suspended state of flipping until consciousness arrives on the scene and lifts the lid to take a look. And at that moment, the past event just popped into existence. The hammer dropped, the cat died 5 minutes ago, but that only takes place 5 minutes from now when you open the lid to take a look. How's that for real? And that's why the scientific community has made statements that the future creates the past. But only when somebody's watching. And these are all from the double slit experiments. The double slit experiment where the photons go through two slits and make patterns on a plate behind as you would expect them to. But when you look away, the pattern on the plate shifts and changes into multiple lines and multiple strips as if it's water waves moving through and interacting with each other and creating summations and phase cancels. So when you look away, it's a wave. And when you turn around and take a look, the wave collapses into particles. Similar to what I'm talking about back here. The piano behind me, I can't see. It's collapsed into a wave of all probabilities. And when I turn around, the wave collapses into particles, which assemble themselves into a piano. It's a dynamic interaction between consciousness and a probability field that is infinite. And what determines what things solidify out of that wave field is what I'm expecting. And when I'm expecting to happen, I'm expecting a piano to be behind me. Because a minute ago I looked and it was there. And I'm expecting it to always be there because I've been taught that that's real. That the particle condensation into a piano is real. And dispersing into the probability wave is not real. In reality, they're both real. And the core of it is my consciousness itself. My consciousness is the primary factor in the universe that translates probability fields and collapses them into solid or appears to be solid fields. If this was a dream, how would I know? I can touch myself. I feel myself through my fingers and through my shoulder. If I cut myself, it would hurt and I would bleed, but I have no independent way of determining whether it's dream fingers and a dream body and a dream sensation, right? Yes, there's no way to penetrate through that except through a process of enlightenment. So we've got Einstein and Boris Podolsky and Nathan Rosen, three of the big physicists of the time. And they took issue with this concept of reality, and they laid it out in a historic sort of 1935 paper. The theory's uncomfortable implications for reality. Their analysis, known as the EPPR, Einstein's, Podolsky, and Rosen, EPPR, centered on a thought experiment meant to illustrate the absurdity of quantum mechanics, to show how under certain circumstances the theory can break, or at least deliver nonsensical results that conflict with everything else we know about reality. Everything else we know about reality being a solid piano, no matter whether I'm looking at it or not. A simplified and modern version of EPR goes something like this. Pairs of particles are sent off in different directions from a common source, targeted for two observers, Alice and Bob, each stationed at opposite ends of the solar system. Quantum mechanics dictates that it is impossible to know the spin, a quantum property of individual particles, prior to measurement. When Alice measures one of her particles, she finds its spin to be either up or down. Her results are random, and yet when she measures up, she instantly knows Bob's corresponding particle must be down. At first glance, this is not so odd. Perhaps the particles are like a pair of socks. If Alice gets the right sock, Bob gets the left sock. This is the sort of the conundrum. I don't know why this is out of focus there. Sort of the conundrum of entanglement. That let's see if I can find out why it's not focusing. So this concept of entanglement. There you go. Where you have two particles that are entangled together, and that no matter how far they're separated, once they're entangled, that whatever one does, the other one does exactly the opposite, that they're paired out. The foundation of that in this world, in Newtonian physics, would be the foundation of coupled oscillators, where the guy who invented the pendulum clock in 1665, that was Christian Huygens in 1665, invented the pendulum clock in a contest in Europe, and he won the contest by making the most precise timepiece in the world. Two pendulum clocks on the same wall go into synchronized swings, but the swings are opposite of each other. If you put the two pendulum clocks on a board, and the board is laying on two soda cans, so the board can swing, then the two pendulums swing together this way. But the fact that they line up and swing together and they don't go out of swing is the process of coupled oscillators. Everything in the universe is trying to dance together to save energy. It's just that when you're talking about the quantum realm and this phenomenon of spooky action at a distance that's faster than the speed of light, that's outside of time and space, that's instantaneous any place in the universe, which defies all the laws that we know about Newtonian physics and speed of light and all the rest. That's a quantum effect outside of time and space. This idea of entangled particles. So whatever one particle is doing, the other one does exactly the opposite of that. If this one is up, this one's down. If this one's right, that one's left. If this is spinning right, this one's spinning left. It's inevitable. So once you've got a particle here that you know is entangled to one on the other side of the galaxy, that you could actually send messages that way. You could build up a Morse code of, a particle spinning at 1 degree means letter A, at 2 degrees is letter B, and you'd see the other particle going the opposite of that, and you'd be able to send messages outside of time and space that way. The universe is sort of crazier than we all think. This concept of two particles that are communicating with each other through resonance, because this coupled oscillator concept is what I think spooky action at a distance is all about. That if I have a tuning fork here at 100 hertz and another tuning fork that's also tuned to 100 hertz, and I bang this one's going to start resonating. How is that happening? Through air pressure wave molecules that collect them together. And the two pendulum clocks on the wall, how come they're swinging together? Because the gears are making vibrations that are carried to the other clock through the wall. The wall is a sounding board. How do you get two particles communicating to each other in space? What's the medium? The medium is dark matter, dark energy. We know that it's not a vacuum, that sound waves need a medium to transmit from one place to another. And classical physics tells us that you can't have sound waves in space because space is a vacuum. That's not true at all. The vacuum is not a vacuum. It's a substance of some kind that can't be measured because it's too subtle. But it can be influenced by the same laws of everything else in the universe. Coupled oscillators create waves. Coupled oscillators want to dance together. And this concept of why the universe is divided into right-left symmetry, why we have these coupled oscillators, two things that always relate to each other across a midline of some kind, why you have facial symmetry, an eye on each side, an ear on each side, a nostril on each side, a hemisphere of your brain on each side, right and left hands, right and left feet. The body is mirror imaged. All of these concepts of coupled oscillators and vibrational waves and quantum fields and standing waves and all the rest is a continual process of different sizes and different scales and different speeds of vibrational frequencies that form everything that we know. To the largest of the large with gravity waves, to the smallest of the small at foam in the quantum field, quantum foam. Why physicists are rethinking the root to a theory of everything. Physicists search for a theory that explains all reality in one framework appear to have stalled, but now they are reinvigorating the hunt by exploring a wild landscape of abstract geometry. And this abstract geometry, this property that at the core of all reality is information, information that is mathematically disseminated through waves, through vibrational waves and standing waves, is sort of very close to the ancient texts once again, where Brahman, the ultimate reality of consciousness, is in a sort of a dream state, spinning out countless worlds and an infinity of living beings that each has their own story unfolding, and all those stories are intertwined with every other being's story, so that all the stories form a tapestry of the grandest tale of all tales, the story of what does God do with an infinite amount of time, dreams this up, for one thing. This whole infinite universe thing of an infinite number of stories and planets and stars and planets with creatures like you and me or not like you and me or whatever, and it's multidimensional. It's that every moment comes a new decision. What am I going to do in this next moment? Am I going to keep talking? Am I going to reach down and do something? And all the possibilities of what I can do and what I could do in the next moment from now, all of them split the universe into an infinite number of corridors where I do each and every one of those things. And that one little tiny change that I made sends ripples out into the universe and changes everything eventually. So all the parallel universes that arise where I act out each one of these possibilities splits the universe moment by moment continually into an infinite number of corridors where that tiniest change plays itself out and creates a completely different universe in every single corridor. And every corridor leads to a new moment with another infinite number of corridors. And each of those corridors leads to a new moment in each one of them. And it splits infinitely again into corridors. Now we're starting to stretch our mind out to start to get a taste of what real infinity looks like. And it's not just here, it's in multiple dimensions. It's in multiple universes, not just this universe. What I just were talking about is just this little universe we've got. What about the infinite number of universes with infinite number of characters and infinite number of stories where each moment, each one of them splits the universe into an infinite number of corridors, which lead to new infinite number of corridors, infinity times itself forever. A dream in the mind of God. That's what the ancient texts are talking about. The Upanishads and the Sutras of Patanjali. The nature of reality. When you experience a moment of enlightenment to that scale, it's sort of like in the Upanishads when Krishna reveals his universal form to Arjuna, which is essentially that, an infinite number of eyes and noses and faces and hands, an infinite number of them all doing different stories in the great dance, cosmic dance, Brahman. And Arjuna falls to the ground, shaking, frothing at the mouth, having no idea how he's supposed to interpret or accept or process what he's witnessing. His emotions are spinning from awe and terror and fear and love and everything else, because the emotions just aren't built to interpret that level of something you have to have an emotional response to. His mind is blown completely open to trying to encompass what he's witnessing. The grandeur and the immensity and the implications are so much larger and bigger than anyone's mind or heart could ever interpret or give expression to, that you just fall down in a faint. Consciousness itself based on an idea that expresses itself through information, and information exchange throughout the whole universe is what a thought in the mind of God sort of looks like. And quote, since we were made in his image, so to speak, where God is somehow sexualized into a male, it's all reflected here in miniature. It's a hologram. It's a fractalized hologram. It's the universe contained in your skull. The magic 3-pound gelatinous mass. Your head in another place than what you thought it was all about. Because what it's all about is before a thought that you might have. The thought is a result of it, but it happens, and thoughts are a result of that. Exploring the cosmic connection. Does the human brain mirror the universe? Duh. Yeah. Does it? Yeah. Drop some acid, you'll find your answer. The bridging cosmic and neural realms, spanning a staggering 27 orders of magnitude in scale. The comparison between the cosmic web and the neuronal matrix might seem audacious at first glance, yet beneath this apparent dichotomy lies a tapestry of shared characteristics and underlying principles that defy conventional boundaries. Within both systems, filaments of connection intricately weave through vast expanses, nurturing a complex interplay of nodes and clusters essential for functionality. Astonishingly, despite their disparate origins, both networks comprise a similar proportion of active and passive components. Galaxies and neurons forming only 30% of their respective masses, while the remainder remains shrouded in enigmatic allure. It's the classic fractal, holographic nature of everything. And it shouldn't be a big surprise. It's sort of painfully obvious in all kinds of nature systems that they reflect cosmic values, and infinitely small and infinitely large all seem, and everything in between, all seem to obey the same kind of sort of structural rules of behavior. New Scientist, a bold new take on quantum theory could reveal how reality emerges. At the smallest scales, everything is made out of a cloud of quantum possibilities. A new idea attempts to explain how our everyday world comes from this using the laws of thermodynamics. And by the way, the law of thermodynamics is sound, vibration. Thermo means heat, right? The whole universe is a universe of thermodynamics. How heat is generated is from the vibrations of things. So vibration itself is the source of the heat that drives the universe. And those vibrations are mechanical vibrational standing waves. That's sound. How about this? Neuroscientists, harmonic brain modes, a unifying framework for linking space and time in brain dynamics. Now we're getting somewhere. That's pretty cool. Human brain networks function in connectome-specific harmonic waves. I alluded to this in a previous broadcast that that when you do a brain mapping computer picture of somebody's brain, and you get these various areas where specific brainwave frequencies are showing up. Disparate areas of the brain are communicating with each other all the time, and it's not just through the neuron connections that are hardwiring them together. They have an ability to jump outside of that network in a number of different ways, and one of those ways is using the law of harmonics and overtones and the concept of coupled oscillators, right? Where you'll get modes showing up in different parts of the brain, just like music on a string. You know, when you have a string and you connect a speaker to it, you'll see different modes in the string vibrating with all the different frequencies that are playing through it. Same thing with the brain. That's not even to mention the concept of gamma wave activity at 40 hertz that's modulating emotional theta waves. So theta waves are modulated by gamma waves, and it lifts all the information right out of the brain into a wireless network. Internet of the brain through frequency modulation. Frequency modulation is a sound concept. harmonics, overtones, spontaneously linking areas of the brain together. That's what they mean by human brain networks function in a connectome-specific harmonic waves of interaction. Interactions form classic structures that we see in the universe, we see in the formation of trees and lichens, and it's all the same stuff. Happening in multiple parallel universes. And then just when you thought that was nothing, I mean, the universe can bend physics laws on its own, according to researchers. So all of the stuff that we're explaining and all the laws that we see currently operating that hold the universe together from the deepest part of the quantum foam to the largest structures of the connectome in the universe, the laws that govern all of that seem to be tightly aligned. And what this is saying is that, well, not really. The current laws that we've got in the universe maybe just is still working on it. It's still like things can still change. The universe is working on always better solutions to the problem all the time, so things could change. It's just a time scale that's so far beyond us. I mean, we wouldn't see those changes, but if we could travel into the future like 100 million years, the laws that govern reality might be very different than what they are right now. We wouldn't recognize it. It would be strange and weird. It's at the core is an idea that's morphing, an idea that's constantly searching for a better way to express itself. And there's always a better way. The search for the perfect way is an eternal search. That's what eternity means. It never finds an end. It just finds a better and better and better refined way forever. Quantum superposition begs us to ask what is real. Quantum superposition challenges our notions of what is real. You know, what does superposition mean? It means that the piano back there, from my standpoint, is a wave field of all probabilities. The only reason it solidifies into a piano when I turn around is because I'm expecting a piano to be there. But if I change my expectation, there wouldn't be a piano it sediments into. Could be an octopus, or it could be something from another dimension. Which brings up this concept of the morphogenic field, that there's a grand homogeneous field of all possible vibrational modes. And out of that infinite field of all possible modes, various things pop out, depending on what consciousness at its core decides. And consciousness is like the collective unconscious among all of us deciding. The idea was put forth by this guy, Rupert Sheldrake, also back in the 60s. Who wrote books and articles and gave speaking engagements about the morphic resonance field, the morphic field. And it's now coming of age. It's come back. It was poo-pooed by the scientific community as being baloney, because the morphic field could morph into anything. And those were still the days of Newtonian physics, where things are what they are, and that's what they are. You can measure them, you can walk around them, you can take pictures of them. That's what's so, and all the rest is hoopla. Now we know, since we've explored the quantum field, that hoopla might be the origin of everything. That these morphic fields of coming of age is where a concept of morphic fields where things arise from nothing, quote, nothing, and become everything that is pretty much what we're seeing in the quantum field. So when science in the past has got this God's eye view of reality, it's not real. The God's eye view means that it's Newtonian physics. There's an objective universe. There's things in the universe, and those things persist. That's real. Whether people are there or not, it's real. The piano is always real. This little computer here is real. I'm real. Nebula are real. And as we're beginning to see, that is not real at all. It can morph in an instant. The inoperable tumor in your brain has a spontaneous remission, and 1 minute from now, it's gone. Doctors are scratching their heads wondering what the hell. But from a quantum standpoint, that's regular business. That's daily stuff. This idea that there's a godlike view of things and everything is solid, as opposed to a subjective view of what I myself, inside my consciousness, experience as reality. Those two, the godlike objective view of reality where everything is, quote, real, and my interpretation of reality on a moment-by-moment basis, have equal validity. And as a matter of fact, the two of those are arm in arm together in a dance that creates everything we see, everything we experience. Science predominantly operates from the third-person perspective. However, this is not reflective of actual human experiences. A critical misunderstanding arises when abstract concepts from this God's eye view are regarded as more real than our immediate personal experiences, a mistake known as the fallacy of misplaced concreteness. Misplaced concreteness. And in reality, it appears to be from what we're seeing from the quantum field that our personal experience of the universe is what is creating the universe. That our collective unconscious experience of what we expect the universe to deliver us as an experience is what gets projected, and the universe conforms to that projection and feeds that back to us as collapsing waves into particles that make the things around us that appear to be real in a dream you can't break out of, because you're touching dream things that seem real with dream fingers, and having resistance when you touch something which is dream resistance, right? The God's eye view. I kind of like that idea. Scientific God's eye view. But that eye has an omni eye and it has a personal eye. And the two of those are superimposed on top of each other in all scales, in all dimensions, in all time frames. It's what comes from under the hood. You know, the I is inside in some deep, indefinable place. And there you have it, you know. Welcome to reality. Enough to make you crazy, you know. All the different types of modes of brain waves and states of consciousness that we can experience and that we can measure with fancy schmancy EEG machines and fMRI machines and all the rest, where we can look deeply into what's going on in the physical structure of the brain that's generating brain waves, waveforms of depolarization of electricity that obey the law of harmonics and overtones and that are deeply associated with different states of consciousness. That reality, you know, can be a bit overwhelming. And that's the idea, is to overwhelm rational thinking mind that continually gets hypnotized by what appears to be the reality of the dream, get overwhelmed to a point where it blows your mind, so to speak, and then something in you is free to see everything from a completely fresh perspective with no preconceived notions of what's real and what's not real. That's the place, that's an enviable place to be able to get to, because in the core of that place is my indigenous self. The part of me before education, before civilization, before rules and regulations tell me what I'm supposed to believe and how I'm supposed to look at things and how I'm supposed to interpret them. A fresh, organic mind that's completely open and free in the world and in myself. That's sort of the yearning deep inside all of us, to find that place in ourselves through whatever technologies or means that we can figure out how to do. And up to this point, it's been years of dedicated practice in monasteries and mosques and secret brotherhoods, and then they invented Tibetan bowls that speeded the process up, and shamanic drumming that speeded the process up. These were high-tech tools. Now we've got more high-tech tools. We've got brain entrainment and binaural beats and headphones and precisely tuned frequencies and EEG machines that can look at what enlightenment looks like and then train your brainwaves to that same spot. That's what we're up to. And the growing tip of that type of research is still on the margins. It's not the mainstream, but it's where it's headed. And that brings us to where we are now, the global mind link phenomenon of trying to access this sort of universal quantum field to break through and reformat what kind of reality we all want to experience and that we all deserve to have as living beings, children of the universe. And that's where we are now. So headphones, please. So this soundtrack is more centered into theta, which is heart opening, and it's also the place where we have that connection in nature with when we have a closer ability to experience our indigenous self in nature. So that's where we're going this time. Mm. So, um, thank you all for being here with me. It's my great pleasure and honor to be here with you wonderful beings whose heads are screwed on in just the right crazy way. Um, I just want to make an announcement. I have another album coming out. It's Elemental Oxygen. So it's the first in the periodic table series that I began back in the late 90s. There will be a string of them coming out. Elemental Oxygen is the first. I gave a whole presentation on that 2 years ago. So if you go back to that same address, https bit.ly/Dr. Thompson live, and scroll down until you see the talk called The Wall. The wall, by the way, is a periodic table that separates. On this side of the wall is Newtonian universe, and on that side of the wall, quantum universe. But in that, I talk about the whole project of converting the color spectra of each element 40 octaves lower until it's sound waves, and reconstructing each element as sound. So look for that, Elemental Oxygen. Meantime, I'm going to leave the chat forum up for a little while until everybody sort of stops talking. So thank you all. Until next week. We'll see you then.